Hi, everybody. It's Deana Paqua of EmbodyTheSacred.net, and I am a teacher and practitioner of cross-cultural energy medicine and contemporary shamanism. And I work mostly with empaths and healers and healthcare practitioners, helping them to grow their spiritual and healing gifts, their confidence, and their energetic abilities to help more clients, their communities, and the earth. And today I want to talk about uh, toxic personality traits and narcissistic personality traits that we might experience in those around us, and how we can navigate those challenging situations with greater ease. And also to notice, even more importantly, notice those traits in ourselves. So it's probably obvious to many of us who the overt narcissists are, especially because there are so many of them, unfortunately, on the world stage, whether it's in, you know, corporations or entertainment industry or in the political arena, right? So, um, the extreme form of narcissism that hopefully is obvious to most of us is, really when somebody through, profound wounding, their focus is really just mainly on themselves and everything is self-serving. Their egos are really extreme. There's delusions of grandeur, and, they lie and manipulate and twist their reality. And many of them have a lot of charisma and a cult-like personality that they are able to manipulate usually large numbers of people. And they're also like religious and spiritual leaders too, including in the realm of holistic health. So it's like, unfortunately, really rampant with these, sort of cult of personality individuals. So, a lot of us who are empaths and energy sensitive folks, we might be able to like really spot them like really easily, with our BS detectors. But then, a lot of us also too have been in, more covert toxic relationships where those traits, were not so immediately obvious to us because maybe, we were abused or bullied a lot when we were younger, and we carry a lot of wounding that affects our ability to perceive, what's really going on. So I remember the first time I heard the term covert narcissist, I was like, what's a covert narcissist? Like, oh my God. And then I was like, am I one of those? And to be honest, I think I do have some of those traits. So it's like, we have to really own our own toxic traits if we are on a healing and spiritual path. So that's, also very important. I was working with some of my students over the last couple of weeks with this technique from a teacher, Meg Beeler. And I know other teachers who have worked with this tool as well, where we, sort of bring up, an individual or, somebody from our past that we had a challenging relationship with, and, sort of their traits or behaviors that drove us crazy, just owning those also in ourselves. And, it'd be like, well, but that's not me. I don't do those things. Fair enough. There are probably many things that we hopefully don't do as some of the most challenging people and bullies that we've experienced in our lives. But as part of being part of the human family, we could have had ancestors who did some of those things. We could have behaved that way in our past lives. So, in the system of Ho'oponopono, which is a forgiveness process, first forgiving ourselves and then working with the tools of Ho'oponopono to release and forgive things that have been done to us or just issues and problems that arise that we experience. It's the main part of it is to own that in ourselves and not blame others, shame and blame, as I like to call it. But, for us empaths, we can still be blindsided by, some of these toxic personalities, especially the more covert ones. So what are some of the things, that we can look for to maybe avoid, getting sucked into one of those unhealthy relationships again in the future, right? And I am certainly not an expert. I'm not a mental health professional, so I advise you to go and seek those out, seek competent folks to help you in a more, complete fashion. But just, what I've been hearing from clients over the years and what I've experienced myself over the years as an energy sensitive person and someone who has been on the receiving end of a fair amount of bullying and toxic and abusive relationships in my personal life over the years, I have some things I can share. And I've had my own experiences being a jerk. So here we go. So one of the things to look for is, somebody who um, has that, very charismatic persona, and they're really, um, very attractive to be around. And I'm not just talking a physical attraction. I'm talking like they're just sort of larger than life, very bubbly, very funny, often very bright. And maybe, they're giving us a lot of compliments or, putting people up on pedestals, like in a very imbalanced way, like getting into a new relationship with someone, and you might be watching them do this. And oh my God, this is the most amazing person. I don't know what I did to deserve them. Oh my God, they're so wonderful. And they've known the person for a weekend. That's a big red flag. It takes time to get to know people. Um, and you need to give it time. So uh these toxic personalities, some of them are also sometimes borderline or narcissistic. um they will put people up on pedestals, like the sort of the they'll just like love bomb you, flood you with compliments, elevate you, put you on a pedestal until something happens. Either you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, or they just become bored, especially in, cases of extreme narcissism, they might become bored and, they'll put their attention elsewhere, and then they have no use for you anymore. And then they go into the discarding phase. And then it becomes like the opposite. You become like public enemy number one. It's very black and white. So either you're the best person and the most awesome person they've ever met, the most wonderful, or you are a piece of crap and the worst person that ever existed. You have all these horrible flaws. You should be just, eating dirt. You're so terrible. It's like a shaming and blaming that occurs. And it can be really traumatic. So if we, as empaths, have allowed that person into our lives and we've, put them in a position of trust, and I've seen this happen even with, from practitioner to practitioner, you're going to seeking advice or guidance from someone in a specific area of expertise, and then maybe, you find common ground and you become friends, but you still go to that person for their advice. And if they're, one of these covert narcissists or somebody, again, with some of these toxic traits, they've learned all these things about you. We trusted them. We gave them all of this personal information about ourselves. They know where the skeletons are hid and know where our buttons are, what our wounds are. Um, and so if things go south, they're going to pull all of that out and weaponize it against us. And it can be like one of the most devastating things you've ever been through, because this was a person that you trusted. And, it could really cause a lot of harm. So, look at, we always say we should be walking our talk in the spiritual field. And we all have our moments, certainly, of not doing that, myself included, all the time. But one of the things to look at is, how are their relationships in other areas of their lives? Are they constantly in conflict with people? Are they dissolving, personal relationships left and right? Like, if they, since you knew them, dissolved like every sibling relationship that they had, every friendship that they had, every work relationship that they had, everybody else is wrong and they are always the victim. So that's another thing to look at, is the victim stories. And we all have stuff where we were a victim of something and, maybe something really terrible. But somebody who is looking to empower themselves and looking to heal is going to look, to step out of that, take responsibility for whatever part of it, they can, and look to heal and move forward. And, working with different therapists or trauma work or whatever's needed, right, to move forward so that we again can step back into a position of power, not stay in that victim story. So if they're staying in a victim story, like you've known them for 10 years and they're still in the same victim story in their primary relationship or with their family of origin, and they can't move forward because, they don't have no one to help them, nobody to support them, and they're not doing anything to build healthy relationships, they keep dissolving them left and right. Those are some big red flags. Big red flags. And they might even have a therapist, but if they talk circles around the therapist, it's not really helping. And if we unfortunately try to call attention to, hey, you had a part in that, like you're still putting up with this situation that you're not happy with, and you keep complaining, like you've been complaining about it for 10 years and you're not doing anything to change it. And then you get upset when somebody says, hey, what about your part in that? And then you become the enemy, for bringing that up. So it's like, they have issues of abandonment. So the abandonment can be you no longer tolerating listening to their victim stories. So, it could be for a long time where, we said, oh, I'm so sorry, and maybe coddled them and comforted them. But then it gets to a point where you can't do that anymore. I've had clients, many clients over the years who have gone through really horrific stuff. So this doesn't just come from a place of, um, limited exposure. It comes from a great deal of experience, plus the students that I've had over the years, especially, teaching at the university. So many of them have gone through really horrific challenges in their lives and losses and um, needing to start over, needing to chart a new direction for themselves. And they didn't stay in their victim stories. They had maybe, no parents to help them, nobody, that had their backs, and they were doing this all on their own, but they didn't stay in their victim stories, right? So covert narcissists like to stay in their victim stories. Sorry, I'm just putting my phone on do not disturb. And they like to stay in the victim story. And then we can get caught in the crossfire. So if we don't say the right thing at the right time, they are going to, tear us down, and it's going to go into that splitting behavior. And, you used to be up on a pedestal. Now you're a piece of crap. You don't know what you're talking about. You're spouting, spiritual and, metaphysical mistruths and, various things like that. And it can be really, really challenging to navigate through that. And one of the things that we do as empaths is we doubt ourselves. Many of us have dealt with like very low self-esteem and low self-confidence um, for various reasons. And, when we're in these toxic engagements, it can be like the deer in the headlights, right? And, we get overwhelmed with that sensory input of the other person being upset or angry. And if they start like poking at our own really deep traumas and wounds, oh yeah, I mean, it can really trigger us to explode, right? And then they have something else that they weaponize against us. And not that, we do need to take responsibility when we lose our tempers and things like that, but just know and understand they know where to go to push your deepest buttons. And the thing is, we need to get to a place where we're not involving ourselves in relationships where that can happen. Um, Especially if we're not mental health professionals and we're not that person's therapist. So there's no reason to, put up with sort of this covert abuse that eventually reveals itself. So it's like finding and seeing the red flags right in advance. So again, one of the things is to look for is that sort of love bombing, putting you up on a pedestal, you're the most amazing thing. Or that's how they operate in other relationships. If they're dismantling their own personal relationships left and right and leaving themselves with very little support, like siblings and family members and other friends and coworkers, if they keep breaking down all those relationships, that's definitely not a good sign, right? Because, and they're saying things like it's all everybody else's fault, right? Everybody else is dysfunctional. Nobody else knows what they're doing. Only this person does. Okay, let's look at the common denominator here in all these exchanges, right? And then the other thing is, they if there's somebody that we've put in a position of power in our lives, somebody that we've sought guidance from and shared a lot of personal information, if we then move into a friendship relationship, when I was in massage school, we called this dual relationships. And that was more to protect our clients. But, this can also happen to us as clients, as empaths, where we trust, we share all this personal stuff. And maybe if we had social anxiety, like I've had a lot of social anxiety and I've said the wrong things, you might overshare just all this personal stuff. And it might give the person a false sense that they actually know everything about your background and know everything that you went through in your childhood, where in fact, that may not be even close to the truth. But you've shared too much, right? We opened a door and overshared with somebody who was not trustworthy, only we didn't know that in the beginning. So just be careful, like who we share with. We don't have to share everything or even share a lot with. Like let the person earn the trust, let the person earn that spot of closeness, in our lives. It's not like we have to go out there and not trust anyone. But they don't have to be our best friends in the first 5 minutes. So those are just some of the things that I've been observing and watching and seeing clients and friends go through with these, toxic personalities in our lives. And they do come usually from early childhood, right? We've been exposed to someone who behaved this way, and it muddied our thinking. And, another thing that we do to ourselves as empaths is we think that we're crazy. We think, oh, they must be right. Well, they may be, when they're attacking us and saying we're X, Y, and Z, and we've done all these things. And, you might be sitting there like, I don't remember doing any of that. I don't think I said that, or I wasn't judging that person, or what are they talking about? Like, it just sounds off, right? So what I try to do is like just make a list of the things that came up, or if they were kind enough to send you, a hateful email listing all your character flaws and all the things that are wrong with you, you have that to reference. And have your own, trusted allies, mentors, therapists. I know several mental health professionals that I've been working with over the years, and even my closest friends don't even know that I consult with these mental health professionals, because that's just been part of my life for such a long time. I don't necessarily talk about everything that I do in my personal healing or process, but have trusted allies that you can say, hey, who will call you out on your stuff. So, if somebody's accused you of, done a full-blown character assault, you have a right to get feedback from other trusted sources, so like what's my stuff and what's not my stuff. And sometimes when we're in that state of like traumatic shock, we can't see clearly. So just say, hey, this person said I was doing this, the X, Y, and Z. What has your experience been of me? Or can you, give me some feedback on that? And you'll be able to discern. You will be able to get the clarity, like what's your responsibility, what's your stuff, and what lies elsewhere. And if somebody comes at you and they're, holding you 100% accountable for their experience, that's just, again, toxic. So, especially for empaths, people who are on a spiritual path, you really do deserve to have people in your life, especially if you're choosing them to become, allies and friends, that will take responsibility for their own stuff, that they're not always pointing the finger at everybody else. They're not stuck in their victim stories from, 10 or 20 years ago or longer, that they take responsibility for their lives, that they're not just looking for a therapist who's going to sing their praises about a wonderful person they are, and meanwhile they're dismantling all their personal close relationships, or they'll never, participate or go to any events that you want to go to. It always has to be about them. They'll stay up all night playing video games, but they won't go to the movies and go, with you with, what you want to see, that your feelings and thoughts aren't a consideration. It's really all about them. So I think the idea is boundaries, right? So there may be folks that we just can't stay in a relationship with because we live in completely different realities, but we can hold compassion, for ourselves and them from a distance. So that's a decision we sometimes have to make, right? Nobody deserves to be abused. So, the idea is just to have your support systems in place, get clear on your own wounds and your own flaws, something I'm working on all the time. And know that, there are a lot of unfortunately wounded and unhealthy people, even in the holistic health field, spiritual fields, every field it exists. So don't have blinders on, take off the rose colored glasses. And even though, we can sometimes see the best in people and see their potential, it may not be, what they can live up to. And we shouldn't also put anyone else on a pedestal. We're all human. We're all here and doing our best, and in a very flawed fashion often. So again, good boundaries, compassion, know your own stuff. Those are my tips. I hope this was helpful. If you'd like to learn more about my work personally, you can look at the link below under the video. Thanks so much.